Welcome students. Today we are going to understand figures of speech. Figures of speech are very important from the point of view of language because these give you the special expressions. These are the tools which give you special expressions. You are able to write in a very beautiful way. Actually, these are called the ornaments of the language. We can provide some greater effect, we can emphasize a certain point of view, we can bring some good value in our expressions in a very nice way if we are using the figures of speech. So understanding the figures of speech will give you a command over this language. Without understanding them, you can't have a command over the language. So understanding them is a must for you. The other names of figures of speech, they are also called literal devices, or we can say rhetorical devices. Now let us understand. These are special expressions which beautify the language. These are special expressions which beautify the language. These are also called literal devices or rhetorical devices. What they actually do? They take the sense of given statement beyond the literal meaning, beyond the literal meaning, or we can say sense. Other names of these means figures of speech, rhetorical devices, or literal devices. If somebody asks you what is the literal device in the given sentence, it simply means he is asking you what is the figure of speech. Okay, as I have told you, these are like the ornaments of the language. As some ornament or jewelry is used to decorate the body, to beautify the body, in the same way figures of speech help us in beautifying the language. What are the features? As I have told you, number one, they enhance or emphasize a certain point. They enhance or emphasize means put force on a certain point. They bring more clarity. Whatever you can't express by writing a few lines, you can express it easily by using a figure of speech. If you are using a figure of speech, you can easily express what can be expressed by you usually by a few lines. So they bring more clarity. They bring beautiful expressions. beautiful expressions. So these are the features. These are the features. Now before we proceed further in the topic, you just understand what are figures of speech. These are special expressions. These beautify the language. They take the sense of given statement beyond the literal sense or literal meaning. The other names of figures of speech: rhetorical devices, and another is literal device or literal devices. What they do, what is their work? They enhance. Enhance means increase, or emphasize means put force, present something forcefully, a certain point. They bring more clarity. They explain a thing in a very easy way, in a brief way. And they give beautiful expressions. If you are using figures of speech in your statements, then it will beautify your language. It will create better impact. It will be somewhat impressive. So I hope you have understood these things regarding the figures of speech. Now we will proceed further and understand how they are classified. Figures of speech are classified on the basis of certain qualities, certain type of features of formation of words and sentences. What are these? Let us understand. Classification. Figures of speech are broadly divided in 4 categories. There are certain figures of speech which are based on resemblance. You know, based on resemblance. Based on resemblance. Resemblance means identification. Then there are devices which are based on contrast. Contrast means things of opposite nature. Then third category, these are based on association. Things of similar nature. So contrast and association, these are opposite words. Contrast means of opposite nature and association means of similar nature, or having certain association, certain similarity. And then based on construction. Based on construction. So the figures of speech which are in this category: simile, then metaphor, then personification, simile, metaphor, personification. These are the examples of those based on resemblance. Then based on contrast. Example: antithesis, epigram. These are the examples of figures of speech. Then based on association, metonymy and synecdoche. Metonymy and synecdoche. And then based on construction, climax and anti-climax. So these are the examples of figures of speech of each category. So before we proceed further, let us understand those based on resemblance, simile, metaphor, personification, like that. Based on contrast, antithesis, epigram. Based on association, metonymy and synecdoche. Based on construction, climax and anticlimax. So this is the classification. Now we will proceed and understand the most popular figures of speech in this class. The most popular figures of speech are simile and metaphor. So firstly we will understand these. Most of you might be aware about these two figures of speech, simile and metaphor. So we will begin with the first one, that is simile. First, this is simile. It is a figure of speech that gives the comparison. We can say it compares two things of different class. It's a figure of speech which shows the comparison, which shows a comparison between things of different class, between two things of different class, between two things of different class, or we can say kind. Two things of different class or kind. Example, her lips are like red rose. Are like a red rose. So here you can see two things of different class are compared. If the things are of the same class, then there would be no simile in that sentence. Next, he is so slow like a snail. This is another example. Her feet are as light as a leaf. Her feet are as light as a leaf. So these are a few examples. These are a few examples of simile, and why there is simile I have already told you, that there is a comparison between things of different class. So here you write a note. If there is a comparison between persons or objects of the same class, or we can say same class or kind, then there would be no comparison like that happens in simile. So there would be no simile. Then there would be no simile in such a sentence. Here you can understand some examples like Mohan's bike is not as good as that of Sohan. So here bikes are compared which belong to the same category. Okay. In the same way you can understand another example. My friend's house is not as good as that of mine. So here what is happening that we are comparing things of the same class. So there would be no simile in such a sentence. So I hope you have understood what is simile. Now we will move over to the next figure of speech, and which is called a metaphor. And this is yet another important figure of speech. So let's proceed. Metaphor is actually nothing but an implied simile. Implied means hidden. Here also you will get an idea of simile, but it is a hidden simile. Here things are compared, but in a hidden way, not directly. How it happens? Second one, metaphor. It's an implied simile. Here it is not said that one thing is like the other, but it is said that the other thing is same as the first one. Or we can say the other thing is taken for granted and it is considered as the same one. So how it happens? Let us see. It's an implied simile. Here, instead of comparing a thing or person, here instead of comparing, you keep it thing. Instead of comparing a thing with another, we take another for granted and consider it same as the previous one. Roughly we can say, instead of saying that the other thing is like this thing, we just say that other thing is this. Other thing is this. How? We term the other thing by the first name, by the name of the first thing. So how it happens? Example, he fights like a lion. He fights like a lion. Here, what is the figure of speech? Obviously, it is simile. Here, what is the figure of speech? Simile. But if we say he fights like a lion. If we say he is a lion in fight. So instead of saying that he fights like a lion, we are saying he is a lion in fight. So it will be metaphor. So here we are understanding how metaphor is different from simile. A metaphor can be written like a simile and a simile can be written like a metaphor, and we can understand this very easily. These are some examples. Let us see some more examples of metaphor. Variety is the spice of life. Variety is the spice of life. This news was a dagger to his heart. This news was a dagger to his heart. We are understanding the examples of metaphor here. The camel is the sip of dessert. So here, let us understand these examples. You have understood this first one as I have explained it already. Variety is the spice of life. What is the spice of life? Variety. It is not said here spice and variety are called by the same name. What is variety? It is the spice of life. So if we want to write the same sentence as a simile, then we can say, what is the work of spice? Spice flavors the food. Okay? And variety gives you pleasure in life. Okay? So you can say, as the food flavors, as the food is flavored by spice, in the same way variety provides pleasure in our life. Similarly, the news was a dagger. Here news has been termed as a dagger. Dagger, you know what is dagger? It's a long knife. So the news has been termed as dagger. So the news was a dagger to his heart, as a dagger pierces the heart. In the same way, the news made him sad. You can say, the camel is the sip of dessert. So here camel has been termed as the sip. So as a sip is used for crossing the ocean, in the same way camel is used for crossing the desert. Okay, so here you can convert these examples of metaphor into the examples of simile like this. So I hope you have understood this. In the next class we will understand about some more figures of speech. So I hope you have understood. And before we end the class, I want to tell you, if you are a new student, then you subscribe the channel. If you are the regular student, then you recommend the channel to your friends. So thank you. See you. We will meet in the next class. Thank you.